Daily Rambam for Monday, Chavtes Cheshvan, Tavshin Pei Aleph, the 22nd Perek Shnayim Ve'esrim of Hilchos Shabbos. So in Perek Chav Aleph, the Rambam began as follows. The Rambam said, it says in Torah Tishbois, so that means there are things you have to avoid doing on Shabbos, even if they're not a malacha. And there are a lot of things that Chachamim aser it as a shvos, some because they're similar to malachas, some because they may lead you to Nisr Skila, and they are as follows. And the Rambam started listing shvosim in order of their association with various malachas. So the Rambam started with Chodesh, and in Perek Chav Aleph he got to Lush. And now in Perek 22, we're continuing from Oifa until Baina and Seiser, which, as we know, the Seder of the Rambam, it's in the middle, not towards the end. So I think there's one more Perek or so after this. So once again, we have a pair of prakim here that are much longer than average, and it looks like we will not be able to complete the entire Perek today. We'll get till about Halacha Chaf, and we'll leave the rest for part 2. So the Rambam starts in Halacha Aleph with Dias Hapas. This is all relating to the Malacha of Oifa. The Rambam says that Dias Hapas, Av B'She'en Malacha, Asru Eisa Chachamim Shema Yabe. So, as we've mentioned earlier, we had this earlier in Perek Gimel as well, and elsewhere. The idea of Dias Hapas is that you have the bread stuck onto the oven. That's how the bread bakes, attached to the walls of the oven. And then the Dias Hapas is the art by which you remove it and retrieve it from the oven. So that's not a malacha. The Chacham say it's also because doing that means you're already too close to baking. You might end up baking. What if you put it out of Shabbos? And Shabbos arrived. You are allowed to rescue, salvage enough for 3 meals. You can invite others to take what they need for their soda, but no more than 3 per person, 3 sudas. And even though it's not a malacha, you can't use the actual, whatever it is, the tool that's used. Instead, it should be el-basakan with a knife. It should be a bit of a shinoi. We have this also in Perek Gimel, that you shouldn't put the pas in the tanner im chashecha, unless the outside will already turn brown beforehand. And if you put it samach lachashecha and it's dark and it's still not brown, so then amazing you can't eat the matzah Shabbos and b'shegeg this mustn't shalosh sudas. So then I'm saying in Perek Gimel. We had it in other prakim as well. Halacha Beis, the Isser of Merchatz related to Oifa and Mevashim. Why do Chachamim say it is forbidden to enter a bathhouse on Shabbos? What's wrong? The answer is it's because of the bath attendants that they started lying. They started heating the water up on Shabbos, and they kept on claiming, oh, this is the kosher water, we did this out of Shabbos. So that's why this is gzeira not to go in at all. I feel zia even just for the purpose of sweating. And there's gzeira, you should even wash your body at home with hot water, even with hot water that was heated there of Shabbos. But it is mutter just for parts of your body, your face, your hands and feet, if it's hot water from before Shabbos. When is this said though? If it was heated by fire, because that's similar to merchatz, that's a gzeira. The natural waters that are hot, there you can actually wash yourself fully. But not in the hot water inside the various caves. There's steam, it's going to make you sweat. And that's too similar. It's too similar to a bathhouse. So most things not. Chavit Tveria is mutter, and Panav Yadav Raglav with hot water from Erev Shabbos is mutter. Basically, everything else is also. Maggid Mishnah quotes the Gemara. It says, "B'tchila they used to use the hot water from Erev Shabbos. The Balanin started betraying the trust. So it happened in steps, happened in stages. First they asked the chamin, but they allowed the sweating. But they were still washing themselves in hot water, and they were saying, "Oh, we're sweating." So they're relying on what they were doing. So then they said sweating was also aser. Only chamit tveria is mutter. And also regarding chamin shuch me'erev Shabbos, also machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Rav says you could wash your entire body aver by aver, limb by limb, and Shmuel said no, only panim yadav raglav. and there's a brayso like Shmuel, so we follow Shmuel here. The question though is,
the problem is not the actual washing of the body.
No, not at all.
Source.
Yeah,
the source of
it's all exer. Now later, Perek can mention other chashashas that come from washing, but according to the Gemara, according to the Rambam, it's simply a purely exera due to a concern about practices that we're getting out of hand. Now the question we have though is, what about hot mikvah on Shabbos? That's a contemporary application, and how did that become mutter? So it's a well-known topic. I'll just quote some highlights from some of the Svarim to discuss it. The source that's pointed at as the Reisha Matirim is the Karban Nesanel. The Karban Nesanel on the Rosh on Shabbos writes, "Kasavti ba'arichos shetvilas me mikvah b'chamen lo yahava b'chlal gzeiras merchat soyes." I wrote ba'arichos somewhere that the mikvah is not like is not included in this gzeira. Problem is we don't have the Karban Nesanel's Kasavti ba'arichos, and there's an Rabbi Yehuda who references this, and the Rabbi Yehuda says, why should I accept what the Karban Nesanel says if I don't know what his reason is? I need to be convinced. You have to convince me. Also, earlier the Chacham Tzvi wrote Chalila to be mater. I'm a first Isser in the Gemara, and if you go in your Toivel on Shabbos and Chamin, it's an Isser. You can call him an Avarian, wicked person. Some of these discussions are relating to Tfilas Nashim, and some are relating to men in the morning. You have the Sidrei Tara, which is on Hilchos Tvila, Mikveh. So he says that the places where there are Mekel, you shouldn't be Meicha, because this Gezeira of Chachamim is a later Gezeira, and it could be that the Chachamim didn't mean to impose in a place of a mitzvah, b'makom mitzvah, because the Toivel and a cold mikveh is a big tsar, and a lot of Pesachim mention over the last 200 years that people are shvacher, people can't handle the cold. That's why the Alter Rebbe came up with Kavayis Bechlal. The Alter Rebbe came up with a whole system to heat the mikveh in his day. There's also you have an Avnei Nezer. Avnei Nezer was a Chassidish Pesach. That's its own. You mentioned it also last week with heating the stones. That's not heating water. That's you're putting hot metal in the stones. And Beis Hamikdash, Shabbos, that was a whole discussion as to what exactly the Isser is and why we're overriding it in the Beis Hamikdash. Because the problem was that putting a hot metal in the water might be a form of malacha with the metal. You're causing the metal to harden. That was the question that led us to mention the issue of the Kohen Gadol. That's its own issue. The Avnei Nezer writes that I hold we shouldn't be moicha if you miskav in the mitzvah. He's talking about the Toiveling Shabbos morning. He says because Toiveling Shabbos morning is a mitzvah, like it says in the Kisvei Arizal, but to just sit in the mikveh, to hang out in the mikveh, that's taka aser. It's only mutter to go in, take off, and out, and that's it. And if you meicha, if people are not doing that. The Chaim of Tzad, the Divrei Chaim, also a Pesach and a Rebbe, he said, I think it's aser, but the Sidrei Tara was mekel, and no g'dei l'dereinu heter b'zeh, sahanach l'hem l'Yisrael. You have the Yitav Lev, also Chassidish Rebbe Pesach, who says that when they have back then they had goyim putting hot water in the mikveh. I was matir. I don't know why people are making a big tumble about this. It could be that the goy puts in too much and the water mamish gets hot. The guf adin, there's no clear isser with toveling and hot water. I said miman afshach. If the water really mixes in, so then it's not going to be boiling hot. It's going to be lukewarm. And if he doesn't mix it, so it's going to be very hot on top and very cold on the bottom. That's also not like a merchatz. A merchatz is not hot on top and cold on the bottom. So not a problem. There's also a Shalos Tshuvas Yeshua Smolkai from Bishul of Kutna, also from the Chassidish milieu in Poland. And he says, I got a letter from Radim that a certain Gvir was there for Shabbos. He went to the Beis HaTevila and he saw that the mikveh was so hot, it was could burn a person's skin. And they told him that I was the one who said it's okay. And he said, isn't it Isser Rechitza B'cham Shabbos? So Bishula says, Eini Zoicher Nishalti al Zeh. I don't recall being asked and giving the Hayra. However, I heard that in Tisk, that's one big Hasidic city, the Tiska Magid, whoever the Rebbe was at that time, said it's okay. And I heard that the Shalom of Bell said it's okay. So, you don't have to be, you should be machmer that it shouldn't be extremely hot, because otherwise it's going to be a davar tamur l'rabim. And you have other makritis as well. Then nowadays, though, the whole system changed. You don't have a guy pouring hot water in. Now you have a thermostat. You have a system in place. So they cited Rabbi Kiva Eger, who already said that if the water got heated on Shabbos without a Maisa Adam, then we treat it like hot water from Erev Shabbos. And the Mishnah Berurah agrees. So if you have an automatic system, that might be even more of a kula, because it can be treated like chametz from Erev Shabbos. Allah,
It's like mikveh.
yeah, for mikveh.
But this doesn't in no way touch the whole gezerah of bathing on Shabbos.
Yeah. We're not touching that. Halacha Gimel. More on the theme of merchatz. And a person can heat himself up next to a fire, and then go wash his body with cold water, but not vice versa. But you can't go wash yourself in cold water and then go near the heat. Because it melts, it warms the water on him. And that in turn is like washing it. So that is a problem with the actual being mafshir mayim. The problem is that then you seem like you just took a hot shower. And if you lead a pipe of cold water through hot water, I feel about the chamei tveria, even a chamei tveria, which you said we're allowed to tayv on chamei tveria, you're allowed to wash the chamei tveria, but heat the water up in chamei tveria, then it's like water you heat it up on Shabbos. You can't use it for washing and drinking. I already mentioned the chamei tveria in Perek. Again, here you're allowed to wash directly in it, but heating something in it, we said in Perek was patur, which means that it's aser. I already mentioned there that Chacham said it's Toldes Chama, it's like the sun, and the Rabbi said it's the fire of Gehenna. Halacha Daled. Here are some things that are mutter. Maybe Adam Kitin Shalmayim and Manicha Keneged Hamadur. You can bring a container of water, put it near the fire. Not to mamash heat it up, but for it to thaw. To cool, that shouldn't be so cold. You have to put a jug of oil there, so that also it melts, it warms up a bit. But not that it gets hot. And a person can also wash his hand in water, oil, and put his hand across from the fire. But the water on his hand can't get so hot that it would scald the stomach of a baby. You can also, you're allowed to heat a clothing and put it on your stomach on Shabbos if you want the heat in that kind of way. Those are things that are mutter. Now the din of an ambati, bath. Ambati shal merchet shimalei mayim chamen. So if you have a tub in the bathhouse that's full of hot water, you can't put cold water inside. Because it heats up the cold water. And you shouldn't put a jug of oil inside, because also it looks like it's cooking it. But you're allowed to put hot water into a cold tub. The Kesef Mishnah gets very, very involved at great length with these dinim, and we are not going to do the same. Halacha Vav.
In the Ambati, which is the hot tub.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so over there the Rambam saying that you're not allowed to deal with it, or you're allowed to put your body in it or not.
We're not talking about body. We're just talking about putting
oil
or water. So you can't put cold water into the hot, but you could put hot water into the cold. Allah Vav Klirishin and Klisheni. Mecham Shapina Mimenu Mayim. So you heated up water in a mecham, and then you took the water out, and now it's empty. So you're allowed to pour cold water into this empty mecham in order to sort of thaw the water out. And you're allowed to pour hot water into the cold or cold into the hot. As long as it's not a klidisha. That's still too hot. And the same goes for a hot boiling pot. Even though you took it off the fire, which is now it's a klidishin. You can't put spices inside a klidishin. But you could put salt. The salt itself can't be cooked unless it's directly over a large fire. And if you already poured it out of the pot into a bowl, so now it's a klisheni. Even though it appears to be boiling in the klisheni as well, and you can put the spices in the bowl. Because the second keli does not cook it. Now, I will quote the dinim according to the relevant dinim about spices and salt, according to the Alter Rebbe, the way Bavram al-Ashvili wrote it up, based on Alter Rebbe Shitta. So the Alter Rebbe writes, Shulchan Aruch, different places in the Siddur. So first, Alter Rebbe says the same thing, that the Kli Rishon, even off the fire, as long as it's Yad Salezba, you can't put the tavlin inside. First, Alter Rebbe says you could put salt, like the Rambam said, and then the Alter Rebbe says, V'yesh Oimrim, that Melech actually only needs very, very little bishul. It's the opposite. So you can't even put it inside a klisheni as long as Yad Salezba. V'amachmer tovi alav bracha. That's in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. And in the Siddur, in Hilchos Absa L'Shabsa, Alter Rebbe says can't be makel in our salt more than their salt, unlike what Alter Rebbe suggested in Shulchan Aruch, because it does melt. We see the salt does melt in a klisheni. So therefore, if you're machmer, not to put it even in a klisheni, that's Yad Salezba, tovi alav bracha. And according to this shita,
same idea. You have crystals that melt.
Right. So I saw that he discussed the sugar. I didn't have a chance to cite those halachas to tell you what the halach l'maisa is the sugar. But
we do it. We do. This is clay shady, and then the sugar and the tea
right.
is there. Finish.
Right. I personally avoid these shilas by not drinking tea. Just not practical, but for me. But salt maybe is a little more. Soup, jam, things like that. So according to this shita, that even a klisheni you can't put it in while it's still hot. So according to the shita, klirishon when it's according to everyone, according to klirishon that's on the fire, then you're for sure not allowed to put it. And if you went and put it anyway, the meichel is mutter because it's bottle. How much salt is there already here? It's bottle connected to the meichel, and some argue and say it's also to matzah Shabbos. Alter Rebbe also says that it's best to not even put the spices in the klirishon, even if it's not Yad Salezba. That way you're making a harchaka, a siyag, you're keeping away from it. And then the Gabi klisheni, the Alter Rebbe says that first Alter Rebbe says that it can't cook even if it's Yad Salezba because this was not on the fire, so the bowl itself isn't hot, so it's cooling off. And some are doubtful and no matter what, if it's Yad Salezba, because there are soft things that get cooked in a klisheni, and we're not bucky, so we should be machmer and everything, except for spices, which Chacham said clearly you can put in a klisheni because they just sweeten the pot, and anything else that adds flavor, like onion and garlic, is like tavlin, you can put in a klisheni, and water and oil, and other mashkin. Again, the salt, the yesh aimen not to put the salt as long as Yad Salezba. Machmer tovi alav bracha. Halacha Zayin, ein shaydenes a chiltis. So what is chiltis? So I've seen it's identified as ferula asa fatida, something like that. It is a product that is somewhat still common today in some level of commercial use. It had some medicinal properties, and the Rambam is saying you can't soak it bein operation bein betzainin, whether it's cold or lukewarm. But it could be inside vinegar. It's not clear if the Rambam is talking inside bishul, which is the context there, because it sounds more like a refuah issue, as we're going to see in the next part of the halacha. And later in Halacha Yud Aleph, we're going to see a case that seems very clear like a refuah issue. So it could be the Rambam is mixing in food-related refuah things here. And if you already started, you already went on the Hilchos regimen, you drank on Thursday and Friday, then this is already in the Gemara. There's a Shabbos Shabbos so you can soak it in coal and leave it in the sun, which is mutter, until it gets warm, and you can drink it and pasak milishtos, because it was understood that the person would get sick if he drank it Thursday, Friday, and stopped on Shabbos. That would be harmful, so that we're matter to do it in that way.
Like taking antibiotics.
Yeah. Right. Halacha Ches. Something that was cooked before Shabbos or soaked in hot water before Shabbos, even though it's cold now, you're allowed to soak in hot water on Shabbos. But and something that was always cold, was never in the hot water. So you're allowed to wash it in hot water on Shabbos if washing it isn't the Gemar Malacha, which we learned earlier in Perek Test, that Malia Chayasha and Kol Yasa Ispinin, certain fish, that washing in hot water is the Gemar Malacha. So then your mamash chayev. But assuming it's not that, so then you're allowed to wash in hot water. But you can't soak it in hot water. Halacha test this din about using the sun itself. You're allowed to heat things up in the sun. Even though we said you're not allowed to use a toldas chama, we learned earlier. Right, we learned earlier in the Perek Madawa that such a toldas chama we said there are not ketoldas eish, but gozru aleim because of it. So the toldas chama also goes like toldas eish, but the chama itself not. You're not going to confuse the sun with fire. So therefore you can put cold water in the sun so they heat up. You can also put good water that's in a container inside bad water, because the bad water is cold. You want to use it as like a natural kind of refrigeration. You also have to put a pot, a dish in a ditch, in a hole to protect it. So those are things that are okay.
Isn't that like Toman, a problem of Toman?
It's not covered. It's just down in a pit. Halacha yod, even if it was covered, you're not covering it. Has to be mamish packed tightly around it.
Yeah, right.
Halacha,
Sealed.
Yeah, sealed. Halacha yod. This is about salting things on Shabbos. So you're allowed to mix water, salt, and oil and turn it into a dip for your bread, or to use it as something to pour into your dish, but only if you make a little bit. But making too much is prohibited. It looks like you're doing tavshel like malachas. You can't make extremely powerful salt water. Namely, it's 2/3 salt to 1 part water. Looks like you're making murias. Murias is actually a word in Latin. Muris, you can look it up. It means brine, salt, pickling. Yeah. So it looks like you're doing that. That you're not allowed to do, and even making this kind of powerful salt water, it looks like it. You're allowed to salt an egg.
The egg floats on top of it. That's a sign that it's too much salt.
The brine.
Right. How do you know it's brine? You put an egg there, and if it floats, then you know you got brine.
Like the Dead Sea itself, where you float on the Dead Sea. Yeah. You're allowed to salt an egg, but not a radish or other vegetables like that. It looks like you're pickling things. But and that's prohibited because it's like cooking. But you're allowed to just dip the radish directly in the salt and eat it. I actually once looked up these halachas because once eingefallen, I wanted to make like an egg and salt water like you do on by the Seder. But the question is, can you do it on Shabbos? How can you do it? Not so simple. So I looked it up in Alter Rebbe. It's in Simishin Chafalef, and the way the Alter Rebbe brings this din there, Alter Rebbe says you're not allowed to make memelach merubim or other liquids with a lot of salt to put it for pickling, for things that you want to keep long term in that way. Even if you're going to eat it right away. And it's not just for the weekday. Still, if any of it is going to be left for the long term, it's like ma'abed. That's the first sheet that Alter Rebbe brings. That's like ma'abed. Use salting to salt the skin. But yeshoimrim that it's kumevashel with different seifrim. Presumably that's the Rambam here. And then Alter Rebbe says vafilu to make mei melach or any liquid with melach, not to pour into some kind of pickling dish, just for a dip for the tavshel. You still can make a lot. What is a lot? I mean, the Rambam didn't define a lot, but the Alter Rebbe defines that to make bavas achas for 2 sudas. If it's for 2 sudas already, that's already too much. It has to be ma'at l'tzorech suda achas. Because when you make a lot, it looks like it's for pickling. And even for 1 suda, you're only allowed to make it samach l'suda, but not from suda l'suda. Because you're not allowed to salt anything and leave it sitting there, not eating it right away. Even if you put oil in, even if you mix oil in between the water and the salt, which counteracts the salt, doesn't help. And then Alter Rebbe adds this thing about the 2/3 salt to 1/3 water. That looks like murias. That's the Alter explains a little bit more. That's the derech of Morias, and you're not to be kovish on Shabbos again, either because of ibur or because of bishul. So I mean, the question still was: you make a whole, you make a cup of salt water. It looks like it's technically more than you need for one egg. On the other hand, if you want to dip an egg in salt water, you need to make a cup. So I assumed my conclusion was that you could make take in a small cup and you dip it in, you spill it out, and I think that's
Just don't make a pot of it.
I think that's okay, right?
But it all revolves around melach.
Yeah.
Because some people make a dip, they take chrein and mayonnaise and so something else to have a dip.
Right.
There's no problem with that.
Should be okay.
Chrein is not really.
Yeah, the whole problem is salt.
Salt.
Yeah.
Because the great crystals are disappearing before you.
Yeah.
So that's a cooking.
No, not that.
No.
Cooking, yeah.
Yeah, it's a cooking thing.
Halacha Yud Aleph, mixing other things. Mutter la'arav yayin udvash pulpul m'Shabbos la'achim. You're allowed to mix wine and honey and pepper. Make something out of that to eat. Al yayin u'mayim v'shem nafarsim and also wine, water, and the balsam oil is prohibited. She'inter oil achilas briim. Healthy people don't eat that. So this seems to be clearly referring to a refuah type of issue. That this is a meichel of refuah. You shouldn't make it on Shabbos. Chen kol kayetzib is anything like that. Yud Beis mustard. Chaydo shaloshim erev Shabbos. We have this halacha also in Perek Ches. That got to be better. If you needed you did lush, you did kneading to the mustard on erev Shabbos. So then you're allowed to I'm just forgetting the word, but to beat it with a spoon or something like that. Bein bayad, bein bekli, with her hand or with a spoon or something like that. You can put honey in, but you can't beat it too hard. You have to mix it. Shachalayim. What are shachalayim? So shachalayim are cress, and they're related to the mustard plant. Shetrafon me'erev Shabbos. If you mix them erev Shabbos, so then on Shabbos you can put oil and vinegar and spices. Again, don't beat it hard. You have to just mix it. Shum shiriska me'erev Shabbos. If you sort of broke the garlic into pieces erev Shabbos, then you can put it on Shabbos into the groats cereal. And don't grind, just mix. Okay, so now we finished food-related shvusim, and now we're moving on to geizes. So if you do hair removal on Shabbos, chayav mishum geizes. That's a form of geizes from an animal. So that's mamash chayav. And therefore, you're not allowed to wash your hands with something that certainly will remove the skin, the hair. Going different things that the Rambam is talking about. One of them is called
depilatory.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It doesn't smell of like rotten eggs. It's sulfur based.
Okay. Yeah. So you have these natural compounds, things like that have this effect. You're not allowed to wash your hands with that. But you are allowed to wash your hands, rub your hands with the powder of frankincense or pepper or jasmine. In this case, you're not concerned what effect it'll have on the hair on your hand. It's not your intention. And clearly, it's not as direct. If you mix something which will certainly remove the hair with something which won't certainly remove the hair, so how do we determine if it's good or not? You follow the Rav. Halacha Yudalid, looking in a mirror. Interesting halacha. Not allowed to look in a metal mirror where the reflection is in metal. Because maybe you'll see something in the mirror, you want to remove something from pieces that are hanging from your hair, and you'll use the metal of the mirror to scrape it off, even if it's attached to the wall. But if it's not a metal mirror, not the reflection isn't the metal, but you could look at the mirror, even if it is loose. Like the Mishnah says, it's machlekes Tanaim and Shabbos. That if the Rambam is following the Rif here, even though others disagree, this is the Iker. The Ramban and the Rashi agree. And midivrem lamadnu shemut lenoshim listakel b'marash l'schuches b'Shabbos v'av b'ishein kavua v'ein chodesh. It just says clearly that women are allowed to look in the mirror. And I move on to malabin, whitening, washing. Halachah dazor. Machabes washing Chayiv mishum malabin is a form of malabin. Soichet ksus, if you squeeze something that's wet, chayiv b'nei shum machab is also a form of kibus. According to the Rambam, so you can't squeeze a piece of material or some wool into the opening of a pitcher, of a jar, of something, in order to close it that way. Because by pushing it, you might squeeze it. And you can't wipe with a sponge. Back then, sponges were actual, real sea sponges. Unless there's a handle, so you're not actually gripping the sponge itself. So you don't squeeze. And you shouldn't cover a barrel of water or something like that with just any piece of clothing lying around, which isn't the proper one, because then you might come to end up squeezing that. What if a barrel broke?
This is even a dry towel, a dry bag.
Yeah,
huh?
Sounds like it. A barrel broke in Shabbos, a barrel of some precious commodity, whether we'll see wine or oil. Now you really want to salvage, you want to catch whatever you can in other kalim. So you're allowed to salvage only what you need for Shabbos for you and your guests. But you can't be sort of absorbing, getting wine absorbed into things, then so the idea being to squeeze it out afterwards, or to keep on touching the oil to sort of catch the oil with your hand. Because if you do it the way you do it during the weekday, you might end up squeezing. So what can you do? Maybe the thing broke, it's pouring out, so put a keli and put it on the ground under it, and whatever it catches, it catches. But and you can bring another keli and also hold it in the air, or or another keli and hold it straight up to where it's pouring from. Because if you're bringing so many kalim, you might panic and run and get more kalim from outside. If guests suddenly arrive and show up, then maybe basically then you can take another keli and put it in the air or all the way up to the top, because now you have archim, so you're allowed to be matzil for the archim. And you're not allowed to go catch extra and then go invite guests. So I'm catching now, I'll invite guests soon. First you have to invite the guests and then catch them.
How does the guests help the problem? The gzeira is still there, that you'll go into the Shraga to get more keli.
Apparently, it's within a certain limit. There's the limit being what you need for practical purposes, as opposed to just infinite. So archim is still an extension of a reasonable limit that you're going to keep to. If you did it all as a trick, presumably you went and invited guests where you didn't need guests, weren't expecting us, but now you can say that I can bring more kalim, mutter. Halacha Yud Zayin. This is relating to dirt on one's clothing, and this is very important, worth paying attention to, because it's very common. People get dirty on Shabbos, and it's very hard to resist trying to clean it. And these are the halachas that relate to that. Halacha Yud Zayin, Titchal Bigdoi, you have dirt, mud on your clothing, Mechas Kasoi b'bifnim, and Mechas Kasoi mibachutz gzeira shem yachabis. So you're allowed to, let's say the dirt's outside, so you're allowed to grip it from the inside and move your fingers to rub it from the inside, but you're not allowed to grip it from the outside and rub it from the outside, because if you go that far, you might end up washing it. As we'll see, washing is definitely not okay. And you're allowed to scrape it with your nail, but we're not concerned that's going to lead to more. This is a sudar aser. This is not relating to dirt. This is just, you have a sudar, one of these types of head garb, like a scarf, something along those lines. So doing that, sort of rubbing with your fingers from inside or outside, is also because that's a form of just straightening it out, smoothing it out, and that's in turn a form of libon. But more of an undergarment is okay. But you don't care about the appearance, because it's more of an undergarment. You're just doing it to soften the material. It was a bit stiff. If you look at the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and Siman Shin Beis Sif Yud Zayin, the Alter Rebbe, what the Alter Rebbe says on this din. So the first Alter Rebbe says more or less the same thing. The tit, you can't touch from the outside, only from the inside. You grip it from inside. Then it's not nicker, that it's coming off. And you're allowed to use your nail, or even a knife. The Alter Rebbe says even the sharp part of the knife, it's not an issue of memachik. But Medvar Mamurim, the Alter Rebbe says, only if it's still soft and wet. But if it's dry dirt, the Alter Rebbe says that even from the inside is also, and inside of lemar to scrape it, because the dry mud crumbles into small crumbs as it falls off, and that is a form of teichen. You're taking one thing and reducing it, you're dividing it into smaller parts, and that's asur midrabanan. It says minatayr, it's not asur because you don't actually need the actual thing being nitchan here. But in teichen, the whole gather of teichen is that it's the thing that you need. So when it comes to teichen, it's not going to be teichen midaraisa, but midrabanan it's going to be a problem. And then Mamad Varamur and Alter Rebbe, this is Allah Yudzayin and Yudches. Allah Yudches, Alter Rebbe says Mamad Varamur, and that it's asur when there's actual mamoshes, when there's something there, the crumbs, you could see the pieces falling off. But if it just looks dirty, and you're just scraping it to get rid of the appearance, then it's not teichen and it is mutter. And also big demetunov ktsas, just a bit dirty, schmutzig, and it's not real mamoshes, just the appearance. You're allowed to scrape. Kadei l'spal b'nekios, especially if it's to daven looking clean. Even though you're allowed to daven without it, your clothing don't have to be that clean in order to daven. Almost finished here. Halacha yudches min oleisanu shenislachach b'tutu b'tzoya mutar l'shachshachay b'mayim. Shoe, sandal that got dirty, you're allowed to sort of dip it in the water. But you can't wash them in the water. Don't allowed to scrape shoes or sandals. But you're allowed to pour oil or wipe the old ones. If you have a pillow or blanket that were dirty, you can wipe it with a shmatim. And if it was leather, you can pour water until it just comes off. Leather is different than other fabrics. If you look at the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe brings this din as well. And then afterwards, the Alter Rebbe says, and it's also very relevant, that beggar that has lichloch, like blood or spit, and for sure mud or worse, if you put water on the dirty spot, even kosher hu chayev, even if you didn't, or even weren't meshachshech, even all you just applied a little water, because wetting a beged is a form of kibbutz for a beged. And even if it's other mashkin that you'd put in orange juice stains your clothing, doesn't matter. It's still a form of kibbutz.
It's interesting because what they're saying, in Zion says Tichal Gabim Mechapse, it doesn't mention anything about water over there.
Right. Well, gzeira sham yachabes. The gzeira of outside is you might come to apply water. So the water
it's all about the water and water which would be considered washing.
Yeah, kosher, even other liquids. And the Rebbe says, and if you are wiping, you have to be very careful. That should be very lightly and not roughly, because then you might be doing schita to the shmutz itself, and it's also to do schita to the shmutz. And there are more halachas there worth looking up in the Siman Shin Beis. Let's just do two more halachas and we'll pause there. Halacha yutas mishin islach lecha yodei batit. If your hand got muddy, mekancha b'znav asus b'znav apara b'mapa akasha sir lechas ba'akaitzin, so you can wipe it on the tail of a horse, the tail of a cow, or on some kind of very tough fabric that you use to grab thorns. Avaloi b'mapa shemekancha b'asa yadayim, but not with a regular towel that you use to wipe your hands. Because if you clean your hand the way you clean it during the weekday, you'll want to wipe the towel right afterwards. That's the next step. Let's say you wash yourself in water on Shabbos, you dry yourself with your towel, you can bring it with your hand. You're not concerned that you're squeezing the towel. That's also relevant to those who go to the mikveh. Or let's say your clothing fell off into the water on the way. You can put them on and walk. We're not concerned that you're going to end up with schita. But you're not allowed to lay them out to dry even in your house. Maybe someone will say, he washed his clothing on Shabbos, now he's laying it out to dry, so you have to be careful not to lay out wet things on Shabbos. And Chacham say it's also for appearance sake, even in private it is prohibited.
Yeah, very good.